Are you a big believer in science? Like maybe science has all the answers. Do you think maybe perhaps God is dead? Do you just hate religion and religious people? Well, you're in luck because today's episode we're going to be talking about is God dead? This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, so I was listening to the book Night by Elie Wiesel this past week about the Holocaust, particularly like Auschwitz, Birkenau, places like that. And it did, I could see how after enduring something like that, you could definitely have the feeling that God is dead because, I mean, just like everyone that you know being exterminated, and it's like, where are you, God? Yeah.
Not only just exterminated, but also all the things leading up to that, the seizure of your property, the being treated, dehumanized, torture, all those things. Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you see what humans are capable of, especially in situations like that, I think it can be easy to think that, there can't possibly be a God, right?
Hmm.
Um, Not in this world to allow those things. It's interesting too, because I think, Nietzsche also said God was dead, and he meant that that was right when science was really getting kicking and going and doing, we were making a lot of developments. The Industrial Revolution was happening in Europe and all. And from his perspective, the way he thought of God being dead was that, religion was no longer doing what it used to do for us. Like it wasn't motivating people to live their best lives, to, be their best selves. People weren't really
We needed Twitter and
like
Instagram for that, clearly.
yeah, yeah, right. Like the Sunday Christian people are just going but not really thinking about it. You have these organizations that are interested more in power than they are in like actually what they're talking about. So like, yeah, I mean, think in the modern world, we see it a lot, especially places like, especially the US, I think, where you don't have a one system for everybody where everybody believes the same thing makes it very hard to see, you know, that it's still something that matters.
Hmm. Yeah, well, also they made it very clear the separation of church and state in the US, and I think that was a big thing. But talking about so like with the Holocaust, right afterwards was all the French existentialists and stuff like that, Camus,
Yes.
Sartre, all of them. So clearly they were impacted by what happened during the Holocaust.
Mm.
And it's it's like we see these atrocities happening nowadays where there are genocides and wars and all types of crazy stuff and nuclear whatever, or should I say nuclear whatever. But it's kind of okay. So I'm just gonna go off a whole bunch of tangents
Yeah,
because I don't really have a
yeah, yeah,
direction for this. But there
yeah.
was this book by Oprah called "What Happened to You."
I didn't expect that, but I like tangents.
All right, yeah. So it was about like trauma. Instead of
Okay.
instead of asking what's wrong with you, which is clearly the first question that comes up, ask like what happened to you. So Hitler exterminated, I don't know, like 6 million Jews and Poles and Russians and like all these other people. I think that was how many. And you have to wonder what happened to him to cause
Yeah.
him to do that.
Well, that was a big question. I think the existentials were trying to, not Hitler specifically, but you know, they had lived through the World War II. They saw all these atrocities. I mean, it was in France's backyard in some sense, in some significant ways, right? And also, they saw people that they probably knew before the war that they thought were decent people, then do things out of like survival instinct or whatever, or for whatever reason that they thought were like horrible. And they asked that question too, like, how could people do this? Like, where is like our responsibility, our choice? Do you have choices? Because the classic excuse was, I was just following orders. And it's like, but you still made the choice. You still did these things.
Hmm.
So how can you consider yourself like a okay or decent person and then also do these things?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was one thing that brought up when you were asking that. So, like, I think of the hierarchy of needs. You know how you have all these needs, and then when like you get to a certain level and you can start thinking rationally about stuff. Sex is
What was that
way up
guy's name?
there.
Was that like
Maslow. Yeah,
Maslow? There you go. Yeah.
yeah. Because in Night, the author he was a young boy and he was in Auschwitz and then Birkenau with his dad, and there was they were like trying to survive together, and there was a moment when they were basically being like force marched out of, probably like 100 miles from one camp to another in the middle of winter, when there was another father and son, and the son saw the father fall down and looked and saw him and then just kept going. And the author was like, how, like, what makes somebody do that to where all of a sudden it's only about me and not about us? And I think it comes down to the hierarchy of needs, because you're literally like trying to survive, and it's basically that's it.
Yeah, at that point, I mean, it's like your basic survival's it. And it's hard because it's hard to know when we look at these situations too, because we don't know. Like maybe they had a conversation and the father knew he wasn't going to make it. And he was like, just keep, don't even look at me, just go, because it'll be harder if you stop,
Mm-hmm.
or they do
Mm-hmm.
something to you. Because they were crazy too. If they stopped, they could get tortured or God knows what, maybe even killed on the spot. So it
Mm-hmm.
was like a risk. But yeah, when it's just about survival, it's interesting what people do, because it's like everything else goes out the window and there's only one thing you can focus on is like making it to the next day, which is terrifying. Like
Yeah.
when you think about it.
So it's like, how does God let something like that happen? That's the question. I mean, the same God who basically annihilated everybody except for Noah. How does
Yeah,
he let that happen?
I know. I love when people ask that. It's like not like
It
if we're
wasn't the
talking
first
about the
time.
yeah, it wasn't the first time. I mean, it depends on it's funny because you get the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are very different too.
Mm-hmm.
You have a tribal God that like is fighting other entities and eradicating things and very like, you know, kind of like, aggressive in some sense. And then you get that universal God that's like a little different and a little bit more detached, I think, and doesn't show up as much as in walking around with people all the time. It's a different kind of system.
Another question that I had was, Hitler Christian or Catholic or one of those?
Absolutely. I have no idea. You could probably look it up, I imagine, but
Yeah,
like I
I
don't know if
probably
he
should have beforehand, but
I
because
don't
it's
know if
just,
he
it's
I
like
never actually seen anything on that. Yeah.
the
I
part
don't
that the part that always boggles me. I can't figure it out. Is like why there's so much animosity between Jews and Christians, because Christians' God was Jewish. Like I just don't get it. It's like
yeah, I don't know.
Jesus was Jewish, and then I mean he was the king of Jews.
Yeah,
It's,
but though but the Christians had animosity between the different subsets of Christianity too. I mean, so like, the Protestants, the what Lutherans, all of them, they didn't all get along either. So I mean,
yeah.
it was just people with different ideas about how you should do things.
Mm.
And claiming, I think they were also, they were claiming something that was, they were using the Old Testament, so they're claiming something that wasn't there for their own too. And that probably made people angry, I guess.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. So Danny,
Yes.
simple yes or no question: is God dead?
Yeah, in a way, I guess. Depends how you look at it.
Uh, I think
I
no.
mean, if you think no,
I think no.
okay.
Yeah.
I
But
mean, I think it's well. Go ahead.
no,
What do you
you
say?
first. You first.
All right. I was gonna say I think it's a matter of I think it is just a matter of belief, and I think it's a matter of you know I guess it's too like what do we want? Like this is the bigger question for me is like what do we want from God or belief in general? Like what is the purpose? And I do kind of agree with Nietzsche in that sense. Like what is it doing for us? Is it helping us or is it hindering us? Is it moving us forward or holding us back? And I think in the sense that like it's not moving us forward, it's not helping us, it's not making us better, then I think it is it's obsolete. If it is something that makes us stronger, better, moves us forward, makes us better people, then I think it's a positive thing. And it's something that still can exist. So I think it depends on belief, but I also think it depends on what that belief does for you.
Hmm.
To give you an example, for instance, right?
Hmm.
If if you believe claim to believe and are very self-righteous and use that as a means to criticize others and try to force them to think how you think and stuff, then I think that's not God. that's
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's something else. You
Oh,
know what I mean?
that's it. That's an excellent point. I 100% think that religion is wrong.
Yeah.
Like all of that stuff. Yeah. So I don't want to
Yeah.
confuse people when I say that, yeah, God. God is still alive, at least in my perspective. But uh yeah, I think this whole like religion, we have it right and you have it wrong. You need to do because okay, so like one thing that I like to do is I like to volunteer because it makes me feel good. And like, I think it
Yeah,
was a Dalai Lama or something said like the most selfish thing you can do is be generous because it just makes you feel good. So I like
yeah,
to
it makes
do
you feel
it,
great.
but like sometimes it's hard to find actual volunteer opportunities because they want you to commit for like 6 months, a year, and do like 20 hours a week. And it's just like, this is a volunteer thing. So like every
Yeah.
once in a while, I'll go and I'll volunteer with like a church group or something like that. And it just irks me. I don't say anything, but I'm going to say stuff now. It just irks me how like they're like, oh, let's give these people these things. And then let's say, in the name of Jesus, this is from Jesus, 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 Jesus. And it's just like they're and like it's the crazy stuff is they'll ask people, they'll say, like, can we pray with you? And the people will say no, and they'll do it anyways. And that stuff just like really, it's like you want to know why people don't like religion? Right there. That's it.
Yeah, it's like you're helping yourself, you're not helping them. And you're trying to force them to think the way you think. And it's just, yeah, that's not helpful at all. And you're doing it for all the wrong. And that's the thing though. It's like, what are the reasons you're doing it for? How are you actually, how are you actually helping? And what does it actually say about you? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is a good example though, where like that's what always bothered me about it too, because the institution survival than it does in anything else that actually matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I mean, there was also all the other stuff where you had a bunch of bad seeds in the Catholic Church just raping little boys. So like that'll turn people
Didn't
off
help.
too. But again, that's not like at least in my perspective, that's not anything against God. That's just like there are bad people no matter where you go.
Well, people are also, as soon as you start an organization, people get greedy, people are, get addicted to power. There's all kinds of things. No, I agree with you. I think the idea of God and faith is, I think, a personal thing. And I think it can be very good. I think it just depends. Like, and it's funny is like, this is one of the other things, not to bring up Nietzsche too much, but he said like, it's that dogmatism that comes with like religion that can be problematic too, where you close your mind off to anything else. But when when you lose your religious belief, that can also happen with anything. You see that with science too. You see that with conspiracy theorists. People just shut down anything else and they believe that, only their way is the right way. And it's like that can't be right. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely other ways to do things. So I think that's also part of it. But I
Yeah.
think if we have a concept of God, if we believe, it should be something that makes us better,
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. I think that should be part of it.
Yeah. So here's some of the reasons why I believe. I didn't
Okay.
always. I actually dropped out of Hebrew school when I was like 8 years old or something like that. But uh, the basically there was a time in my life where I had this mountain that I did not think was possible to be moved. And I said to the God, to the universe, to whatever, if this thing is moved, I'll know that you're there. And it was moved. And so that was proof enough for me. And then I also noticed that like I'm the type of person where if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, that's fine. Just toss it out. And so I tried it on and my life got a lot better with it. So ended up working for me. But I generally don't tell people that I'm religious or spiritual or believe in God because it rubs people the wrong way. And I totally get it because I do not like when people start proselytizing to me about any type of God.
Well, because I think a lot of people think of it and they think you're going to, again, try to convert them, right? Then that's what you're interested in, not about just the idea. But I like
Mm-hmm.
that method, that if it works for you, it works for you, right? If it makes things better, then yeah, then clearly adopt it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if anything exists or not, because most of it's just made up. I mean, all of it's made up anyway. So just, if it works for you, it works for you. Great, use it. Because if it's something that makes things better, makes it easier to deal with, makes you better equipped to handle the world around you, then yeah, that's a good thing. Why get rid of it?
Yeah. And isn't it crazy? At the end of the day, we're all going to die anyways. So like
Yep. Can't get away from that.
and like if there is a God and people believe in him, then they'll go to heaven and they'll be, on God. But if there is no God and people don't believe in him, then they're just dead. So it really doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Either way, it all comes to an end.
Yeah, it's funny too because there's so many different conceptions of God and so many different ways that when you study religions and stuff, what always fascinated me is all the different ways like we've portrayed gods in history and different cultures. Is very interesting. Where some have many, some you have only one, some they're kind of like more like humans, some they're not. Like it's really interesting. And the powers like given, I don't know, I always find it fascinating.
And it's cool because it's always like something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
All right. So like one of the things that I found interesting about 12-step groups is like they believe in a power greater than themselves, higher power greater than themselves. And but it's like it's a higher power of your own understanding. So
Yeah.
it can be whatever you want it to be. And there's and so there's still so much resistance to that, but it's not because of that actual idea. Most of the time it's resistance because when they were children, they were forced to go to church,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
they were raped by some priest, or all this different stuff. That's the
Yeah.
reason that it
That's a good reason though. That's one
oh,
particularly is a
dude,
good reason
totally.
though. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, living in America, there's things against cruel and unusual punishment, but like seriously, I think we go way too easy on those guys. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, it's funny too. Go, I think the 12 says word is funny too, because I remember of it too, because they say it can be any of your own making, but then they just keep saying, God. I think that also rubs people the wrong way because it sounds like they're talking about one, but they're not. I know
Mm-hmm.
they're not, but it's like, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gotta be your own design. I think there's the other problem though, because if you look elsewhere, if you have faith or you're looking and you look elsewhere for it, or you take somebody else's idea, it's not gonna work for you. It just won't. Because it's going to be tailored for them, so you have to find that relationship yourself. Kierkegaard used to say like the highest truth is like your your individual relationship or personal relationship with the absolute. And I always like that because it's not about religion, it's not about going to church, it's not about an institution, it's just about your connection to whatever that higher thing is for you.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Because that always
So
got me, right? I was gonna say that's the whole point, right? Is that it's supposed to make us better. And you see a lot of people that claim to, and they're not better. And it's like, so, you know,
mm-hmm.
clearly it's not a one size fits all program. It's got to be, individual, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then there's this whole like AI thing that's getting pretty popular now. Like what if we are just some program in some alternate reality and God was the guy who programmed it, you know?
Right? Yeah, it could be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Could be just some like we're just a simulation running or something. And like, yeah, I don't know. That gets more believable as we move forward with how fast technology develops, doesn't
Yeah. Like that was his username. He thought it would be funny to spell dog backwards
it?
because he really likes dogs. And
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, my username will be God. And yeah, who
Yeah.
knows?
That is interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, video games have gotten so good, technology's getting so maybe we are in a simulation. And
Dude,
again,
they
none of this
got
matters.
I see the
Either way.
advertisements for these AR glasses all the time. It's only a
Yeah.
matter of time before people have them on and we forget there's another regular reality.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I think Apple just came out with them. They're so funny because like now you're gonna wear them all the time. Kind of your computers are gonna be in front of you and people are gonna be like all the time. It's
I
gonna be a
am
mess.
I am no longer getting out of people's way. If they are wearing
No.
those glasses, I am walking
Yeah.
right through them. Like
Yeah.
forget it.
Well, I remember when I first saw them come out, they were using them, I think they were like augmented reality and they were using them for like training at business like manufacturing and stuff. And that made sense because it's like having somebody with you to point things out all the time, which was like that's a good idea. But then like to just use it like because you work on the computer all day seems crazy.
But it's just going to be people who use it so they can be on Instagram all day. So they can be
Yeah,
scrolling while they're doing other stuff because they're doing that anyways. And
yeah. Now you can't see it, so
mhm,
yeah, that's true.
mhm.
Yeah, can be using like that.
Yeah, so I guess anything else you want to say about Is God Dead?
No, it's a tough one. I think, time will tell.
Yeah. I like what you say that it is somewhat personal. And I also another thing. Oh, there was this I forget there was the name of this silly show on I think it was on Netflix. It was like God's favorite person or something like that. I forget the title. But basically the what it comes down to well, there's the possibility that everybody could be correct. So like there's this whole like
Yeah.
like my God's right, my God's right, and like the whole Middle East has been just like a, a
Yeah.
disaster forever because of that. But it's like there's a possibility that everybody's right.
Yeah. Or to say it differently, that everybody's wrong. And,
Mhm.
you know, there's some part of it is right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, anyways, there you have it.
Yeah.
We answered it very succinctly. I think definitively the
Pretty good. Yeah.
question never needs to be asked again because we just answered it right there. Uh, is God dead? I think we know the answer. But anyways, this is the Existential Stoic podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, leave a review, particularly on Apple Podcasts, or give us a thumbs up on YouTube, whatever it is. But reviews are like gold for podcasts. Also, down in the description, we're looking to put together a product for you guys, either a book, a course, whatever it may be. It'll help your life improve dramatically. So if you could take a few minutes, answer some questions for us, that'll help us put it together. And this is the Existential Stoic Podcast. We will catch you guys next time. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.